Come with me, I'll tell a story that you might have heard before. Graphically novel, but the same old trouble. Villains always knocking at the door. Pretty pictures on the page, but nothing ever stays the same.
Thank you, Vandello, and welcome to the beginning of the 6th season.
No way.
We have been doing this for 6 seasons.
Get out of here.
Like what?
73.
60,
this is the
70?
74th episode.
No way.
Yep. We do 12 a season.
We've already done 5 seasons, so 60
Oh, yeah,
plus
60,
bonus. Like
60
that's how
plus
we're
the
done
bonus.
with
You're
this.
right.
We get
Yeah,
to 72.
63. Yeah. By the end of this.
That was very poor math
well into
explaining.
the
Bad maths.
Yes. It's because
Bad
I was doing 12
math-splaining.
times
He was
6.
math-splaining poorly.
Yes, yeah, to the guy that took Calc 2, yep.
I'm not mansplaining. I'll tell you when I'm mansplaining.
I said math-splaining.
I'll add it up for you when I'm math.
Jerk.
And with me, you've already heard him, but it is our Black Mask.
Oh, I get to be Black Mask? That's awesome.
Our
Probably the best compliment he's given to me over 5 seasons.
our twin eaten by the shark. Hits Bear.
Thank you. Arguably the best intro you've given me in its entirety.
We can go back to season 4.
No, that's fine. I'm good. Thanks. We'll stick here. I'm fine with this. And I have the pleasure of introducing our Osita.
Yeah!
I would say our Waller, really.
Oh, thanks.
Until you really get her mad, and then she's thylacine.
That's true.
It is the Baronessa, Ms. Jennifer Howland.
Thank you, Bear. It is my pleasure. And you know what I just realized? And this has happened to me, I think, 3 other times. I don't think I've ever heard your last name said out loud.
Well, we joke that it rhymes with Lucifer.
Oh, okay.
So
Here we go. We have Jenni, Loopy, Pulsipher joining us today. And we are super psyched because not only am I excited about today's comic and movie, both, I'm super excited to have Loopy on the show.
thank you. I didn't know I was going to be your season premiere. How exciting. Thank you, guys.
Well, and yes, you were going to be our season part of our season premiere last time, but that did not work out.
No.
Listen,
because
there were issues.
Yes, we were less than kind to Justice
They were
League.
mainly our issues, no
Yes,
one else's issues.
They were mainly our issues.
Well, there were some timey-wimey issues there.
Actually, they
as
were
well.
predominantly Josh's issues, but we're going to take the blame. We as an entity are going to take the blame.
Loopy has known me for like 15 years now. She's well acquainted with my issues. So,
I'm so sorry.
I think I've written some short stories featuring your issues, actually. So.
that's true. Yeah. And it's fantastic to have you on the show, Loopy. We've, I've been discussing the show with you since we really kind of started, and I've always wanted to get you on. We seem to sneak Kat Essman on for our DC episode since she's local, but I'm glad that we could get you on for predominantly kind of one of the things that you're known for in our circle of friends, and that is your deep and forever love of Miss Harley Quinn.
Miss Harley Quinn, Harleen Quinzel, yes, my girl. She's
Yes.
been my girl since the 90s. So I'm excited to be able to nerd out about her too.
Yes, absolutely. And she is in the Suicide Squad, which is what we're going to be talking about today. And we're, for those who are just tuning in for the first time, what our goal is to get you to read a Suicide Squad comic. If you like the Suicide Squad, we're here to tell you why going to the source material is awesome. And man, Loopy, I think you even said when we were discussing it that you hadn't read Bad Blood beforehand.
Correct. Yeah.
And we hadn't either. And man, we picked a great comic.
You really did. Like, I actually had to hold myself back from texting you late at night when I finished it a couple nights ago, because I was like, oh my goodness, this is so good. Like, vastly exceeded my expectations. So
Trust me, I was in the same way. I was just reading it last night, and I was drinking. It was a Friday, and I'm just like, it's Friday off. I'm going to have a few beers, and I'm like, close onto a 12-pack in, and I'm just like, this is really awesome. I should really not pick up my phone right now because I've been drinking. Somebody's going to hear about this.
But yeah, Suicide Squad, what we're doing is you can get in a collected called Bad Blood. It's all 11 issues of the run that they did. It started in 2019. It ended in 2021. There is a newer Suicide Squad that has just started, but it's not to the point of having a collected. So since we focus on graphic novels, that's what we're going with. Without giving too much away about the comic, since we want people to read it. Oh, you know what? Where is my mind? Loop, you've never been on our show. We have a tradition.
Yes.
Yes, we do.
Please
tell us.
Please give us your background on comic books.
Where did you start? How
yeah.
did you get into nerddom?
I almost can't remember because I was a very, very early reader. I could actually start reading words when I was 2. And one of the ways my dad to encourage me to continue reading and to advance my reading ability was to take me to the comic book store. And we're talking like little Loopy, like 4-year-old, 5-year-old Loopy, going with my dad to the comic book store and picking stuff out and reading comics. I very clearly remember a show and tell from 2nd grade where everybody else was bringing in like dolls and cars and things, and I brought in a long box of comics.
Nice.
And there were people who were like, you can't read these, you're too young. And I'm like, let's open one up and I'll tell you all about Superman or Spider-Man. And it got to the point where I was so bored at that little like show and tell that I actually dumped the whole box out on the floor and sat on top of it like a little dragon. But I like I said, so I can almost not remember a time when I wasn't into comic books, but I do have to give a special shout out to my brother who really helped me take it to the next level. My brother's 4.5 years younger than I am, and when he could read, he started reading comics, and we immediately diverged into a DC and a Marvel rivalry. We're talking like I'm 10 years old, and this has started. So basically, I have been defending my love of DC Comics to my brother for 35 years.
Yeah.
So
That is also a theme that we found with our guests. Kat Essman talked about it too, about how it's at the beginning of the Justice League episode, about how it's difficult to be a DC fan in the way that comic books and everything. It is. And she laid out the reasons that it is actually more difficult to be a DC fan than it typically is to be like a Marvel fan.
Well,
go for it. Go.
I was going to say, I think that it's an interesting point to make, though, that DC fans are defending themselves with other nerdy, like comic booky people who are aware of comic book characters, but not really as absorbed with them as comic book geeks are. They know the DC
They
characters.
know the big three. If they know any comic books at all, before they know anything else, they know the big three. They know Wonder Woman, Batman, and Superman.
Right.
Superman's the most widely recognized comic book character in the entire world.
Yep.
His brand is the most valuable of any comic book brand. And interestingly enough, you talk about the big three, but it's actually now the big four. Because Harley is considered number 4 in DC Comics right now. So this kind of ties back into stuff we're going to be talking about today. Yeah. But I was just reading a news article last night talking about how Harley consistently outsells everybody else except the big three. Even the Joker. She outsells the Joker. When they feature the Joker, it doesn't matter. Harley's comics still sell better, which I thought was super interesting.
Well, do you think that might be because she's probably, of those characters that you just mentioned, the most approachable?
I would not actually say that Harley is the most approachable.
I was going to say, I totally agree with Loopy. I don't think she's approachable at all.
Well, no, I mean, she is not superpowered. She's not a god. She is a person, kind of a messed up person.
I I would love to talk about that for a second because I still think Sue's the more relatable character on a lot of levels. I come from the Superman Clark Kent first school of approach of Superman, and very much like when you look at the things that those heroes struggle with in their personal lives, right? Superman's challenges involve things like, how do I help my aging parents, or how do I help get my kids through high school without having a meltdown? His problems are actually very much everyday person problems. And the fact that he has powers just puts him in a tighter spot, but he still has those same approaches, challenges, difficulties, loves, and losses like everybody else. And I really think people do a big disservice to Superman when they just talk about him being able to crush rocks into diamonds, because that's like the least of what's cool about him. But
100%. No.
Yeah.
Huge shout out to the current Superman and Lois show on
good.
CW. Because it is Superman, but it's mostly Clark Kent as a father of two teenage boys, one of which that got powers, the other of which did not. And the family dynamic of how he works with that, because the kids didn't know he was Superman before the first episode, so they're teenagers and they find out their dad is Superman. And it is very well done. It does have a bit of that CW drama, but not the things, Jen, that you've discussed, where it's like, why is everybody just lying to each other and keeping secrets and all this stuff that's just going to be revealed by the end of the episode. It's a very honest family dynamic. It's really good.
So maybe I stated that wrong. No, I know I stated that wrong. So I feel, and this is my personal opinion, that Harley is more interesting. Maybe not approachable, but more interesting.
I'll give you that.
Than Superman, Wonder Woman, whatever the Batman. Yeah, I was like the other dude, whatever his name is.
As a guy that really, like, the only comic book experience personally that I had coming into any of this stuff was some Hulk, a lot of Transformers, like old school Transformers, and some old school, like I walked in like as Superman died and went back, read some of the old school Superman stuff before that, a little bit that my old man had, and then like read the death of, and I was just like, this is super interesting. Went back, read the old school stuff, not so much. But I agree with Loopy. Superman is the most approachable. He is down home. He is, especially for me, because
Midwestern
that's
farm
exactly
boy.
what happened. I grew up Midwestern farm boy. So it's just like, okay, I understand this. This makes sense. And then you compare, the way that Superman grew up to Midwestern farm boys now, and you realize that that's not how politics worked out anymore. But anyways, we're going to just move on, skitter on right past that about how Superman's actually cool and Midwest farm boys aren't.
But yeah, it's...
But you take a look at it, it's like Batman, totally unapproachable. He is just a traumatized, white privileged 1%er, like super traumatized, but then decided to kind of put his money towards a good use. Wonder Woman is a goddess.
Yep.
Can't work with that. Yes, Harleen would be the next best, because you have someone that actually worked her way towards PhD, had some mental issues. Probably the most relatable, if not the most approachable.
Well, so one of the things that keeps me coming back to Harley in all of her incarnations, for me, the sort of everyday fantasy of one of these days, I'm just going to say screw it to my work, my history, and everything else, and I'm going to take out a baseball bat and hit somebody upside the head with it. There's sort of like this vicarious living fantasy through Harley that you can do.
If I made you a big ass mallet, would you take that to your bosses?
And then go and join roller derby.
I have several years of carpentry experience. If you want a big ass mallet, I can make it.
Yeah, I mean, who doesn't want to walk away from their challenging day job where you're faced with misogyny and paperwork and tedium, and then just throw on some spandex and do whatever you want,
make jokes and
And make fun of Batman because, oh my god, this comic book did so much.
Yes, I love it.
Well, let's bring it back to the comic. So, Loopy, you had mentioned that you had not read it before. None of us had read it before. As a Harley and a Suicide Squad aficionado, what did you think?
Loved this story here in Suicide Squad. I don't want to give away anything, but as you mentioned, like there's not just a twist, there's a double twist.
Yeah.
So the plot builds on itself and it gets very, very interesting. I also love how they kind of hand the baton over to some really interesting new characters while still at least giving you cameos of all the characters you're expecting to see and love from the movies. So yeah, really cool. Harley can sometimes overshadow things a bit, but I feel like they reined her in and they used her as comic relief, but not too much. She wasn't gimmicky, right?
Yeah.
Almost more like Harley's the voice of the audience in that way.
And
Yes.
actually, one of the best representations I thought of Harley ever, because you actually get to see her be both vicious and super intelligent in one scene, which you don't even see. You don't see in any of the movies. I haven't really read any of the rest of the Suicide Squad stuff or Harley stuff, but like all of a sudden, out of nowhere, yes, I got all the information I needed because I have a PhD in this shit.
Yeah.
And because I don't give a fuck and I'm going to tie you up and ether you to do it.
Exactly. Well, and that's another thing with Harley is, and I have been a little worried about this trend with Harley, is I've been worried that they take her edge off too much. Because I think it's always important to keep in mind that Harley was a villain before she became an anti-hero. Her list of crimes is considerable, including mass murder, terrorism, rape, etc., etc., etc. And that she's really quite dangerous. And a lot of people can forget that Harley is dangerous, but they emphasized that in this comic and they emphasized it in the movie, which, let me tell you, had me like squirming around in my seat because I wanted to jump out of my chair.
Yeah.
So.
I mean, we'll get to it.
The
but
movie's coming.
The movie,
Yeah.
I was so excited.
This was so good.
It was so good. It was exactly what this franchise needed. That movie was perfection. It was perfection. We'll get there.
So speaking of which, Jen, what did you think of the comic?
I loved the comic. I absolutely loved it. And in fact, when I finished I was like, that's not an ending. I need more. So skipping ahead to the end, I will read more of this. Absolutely. Okay. I like the new Suicide Squad that's been assembled here. I also kind of like the balance shift in the balance of power that comes in this run. Not to give too much away, but it's going to be interesting to see what they do moving forward. I also really appreciated and could tell that it was written recently because we had an NB. We had people being respectful of each other. There were characters that were... We
had a beautiful little non-binary couple.
Right, that's what I said.
Yeah, sorry, I missed that.
NB.
I was in the middle of...
But we had,
looking up other things that I needed to remember. I apologize.
We had, people who were not, their character and their position in the team was not based on gender, but ability and intelligence.
Yeah, and that plays a huge kind of role.
You take a good look at the Revolutionaries. I think there was one white person
in
the whole group, and that was Wink.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So to jump in, I love this. I'm glad that I got the hardcover of it because it's definitely something that belongs and will stay on our shelf. But the one thing I wanted to bring attention to that you kind of touched on, but and it's not much of a spoiler because it's like right in the beginning, but there are a number of characters that are introduced in this book. And one of them is Deadly Six. And I loved Deadly Six because he has the power of he can amplify sins in people.
Mhm.
And Harley is the one that goes, yeah, but there are seven deadly sins. And he responds with, weaponizing
amazing.
lust would be icky.
Yep.
Yep.
It was so refreshing. It was
They
so
just avoided
amazing.
the whole thing. They were just like, listen, no,
Yeah,
done.
it's
we're
gross.
just not gonna.
Yeah.
I have fucking morals.
Not
Right.
even 10 years ago, that would have been like the first go-to sin that
Right.
would have been used in a comic book.
Right. No, just so well done.
I mean, let's go back to what was the gunslinger sci-fi thing that we just did? I can't remember her name.
Earp?
Winona Earp, yeah, the comic book for that.
Yeah.
And if we were talking about weaponizing
Yeah.
lust,
Yeah.
Mhm.
that was what 20 years ago. Yeah.
Yeah. That was the entire comic.
Yeah,
Right.
was weaponizing
Was
lust.
weaponizing
Yes.
lust. Yeah, and so just a high recommend because you're seeing kind of when people say, "Oh, well, you can't take the sex out of these things." You can't. Yeah, you can. I mean, crank up the violence a little bit, but I mean, it can be done, and it can be done.
Do you
well.
really think the violence was cranked up?
I mean, comparatively, no. To other like Suicide Squad comics, no.
No,
I also liked that, and this is not a spoiler, but there was a headshot that was covered with the DC
I know exactly
label.
what you're
I was
talking.
like,
Yeah, it was so
Yeah.
good.
I was like, oh yeah, I
There were
like
also
it.
some very, and I pointed this out earlier when we were just having the conversation about it, and I wanted to say this word just for Wheeze. There were some very Hitchcockian moments.
Mm.
Mhm.
Very, very much like you don't have to see actually what happened in the panel.
Right.
They literally don't show you the person that died.
Hmm.
They just let your brain go, and my brain did immediately, and I immediately recognized that as, listen, they could have showed us all the gore. That's not unlike comics to do that, but they didn't, and that was a very Hitchcock moment of, listen, they literally this guy's brains could have been all over everything, but we chose not to.
Right.
And it made it that much better.
Well, even when you compared it, because like when we were getting ready for this episode, Josh and I were talking about this compared to Suicide Squad Kicked in the
Yeah.
And I flat out said I wouldn't recommend that one because they deal with sexual topics so badly
Yeah.
in Kicked in the Teeth. And that's really kind of like when you talk about graphic novels about the Suicide Squad, it's basically the one right before this one, essentially.
Yeah. No, it was the
and-
beginning of the
yeah.
New 52, wasn't it?
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's not that old. And I mean, I there's a lot I like in Kicked in the Teeth, but they just dealt with that one topic so badly that I wouldn't recommend it to someone unless I really, really knew their taste.
Right.
So.
Absolutely. No, I agree. It actually reminds me, bringing around to nerdiness and other topics. There's one of my favorite role playing games is called Little Fears, and it's about like you're a child and you have innocence and stuff. But one of the things is in Closet Land, which is where all the bad things come from. There are 7 kings, each representing a sin, and there are very large warnings that previous guest of the show, Jason L. Blair, who wrote it, put in there to say the Defiler is the king of lust. If you are going to do a lust campaign, you better know every single person sitting at your table, and what their limits are. You're going to need to have talks with them ahead of time. This is not something that you just like introduce into a game, without serious consent. And it seems like that's the difference between Kicked in the Teeth and Bad Blood. Bad Blood is one of those, we're going to bring you to a certain level, and then either it fades to black in a way that you're like, you feel very Hitchcockian, you fill it in yourself. Old Universal monster
or we're going to
movies.
comic book the shit out of it, Howard the Duck style, and put a DC logo over the top of it.
Right. We're just going to, keep it.
I say Howard the Duck style, even though that's a Marvel franchise.
It's all good. Deadpool styles.
There you go. That's
which is another Marvel. But this is also where I have that I have to make a note that I lied to you, Jen. I said
That's not the first time.
Well, I said that I chose this because I wanted to make sure that we got something that had King Shark in it. And as I found out, not knowing that I had lied to you, when I researched, the shark is not,
Not King Shark. Yeah. No, I was going to say that, but yeah. No, I
There is
don't.
a total of 7 people in the DC universe that use shark in their title or are sharks. 3 of them are actually sharks. There's King Shark, the Shark, and Guppy.
Guppy.
Yes, sentient sharks are apparently a thing in DC.
A
Yeah.
thing. That
Well-
said, I still think the shark scratches that itch, right?
Right.
You know,
Still a giant shark. Yeah.
Still eats people. Cool.
Right. Well, I have to come clean. My love of King Shark comes from the most recent
It
animated
comes from Ron
Harley.
Funches is where it comes
Ron
from.
Funches as King Shark.
So good.
So
Listen.
good.
Sly did a hell of a job. I'm not gonna knock Sly.
Oh no, he was fine. But Ron Funches as King Shark, like the website building computer IT geek King Shark. Oh my God, yes, that's who I want.
But like what kind of a world do we live in where we can sit down and debate the merits of the different on-screen treatments of King Shark?
It's great.
It is a brilliant and wonderful
Yep.
world, and no one should ever disparage it.
Like
Yeah.
there are multiple live action versions of King Shark. He was on the Flash show.
Yes, he was.
Come on.
Literally a dude that turned himself into a shark.
Oh, I saw that. That was not good.
Yeah, The Flash is not a good show, but
I
we'll get to that eventually, I'm sure.
like the Flash.
Yeah,
I did.
Respectfully disagree. I also enjoy the Flash.
I did enjoy it for like the first 2-ish seasons, and then after that, I was just done. Like it just went sideways.
Well, my feeling is it's not for me. It was not made for me. It is not for me.
Yeah, I have a higher tolerance of CW in general.
But it's not.
Listen, your favorite show ever is Dawson's Creek,
It's
so
not
we
my favorite
get it.
show ever, but I do like Dawson's Creek. West Wing's my favorite show ever.
Well,
Anyway, so before we get into the movie, because this will tie in, I want to, since
we
I
also
have-
kind of did this a little bit backwards because normally we start with the video representation and then go into the
That's
comic
true.
book.
you
But
know,
the comic book was just so damn good this time.
which
So good.
is also why I forgive you for
Thank you.
lying to me.
the shark. I saw a shark on. There was
There's a shark on the cover.
It's a shark.
He judged the book by its cover.
I judged a shark by its cover.
If you're gonna judge this book by the cover, you need to pay attention to this little character right here, and that's all I'm gonna say about it. It's a little animal wearing a cape.
The dog. Yes,
Right.
yes, dog shot.
Yeah,
Dog shot.
Yeah. Which and if you notice, Dogshot and the shark on this cover are about the same size.
Yeah.
So I want to talk about Squad Harley versus Independent Harley, because before we talk about the Suicide Squad,
Right.
I want to talk or revisit a little bit Birds of Prey, because
Sorry.
this
Sooner
seems
or
to
later,
be
we're gonna have an actual just Harley
just Harley,
movie.
yeah.
Yeah.
But we never seem to quite get one of those.
Well, but so this is the Harley trilogy, right? So you
Yeah,
start with
100%.
Suicide Squad, you go to Birds of Prey, then you go to the Suicide Squad, and you get to see there is a difference between independent, like on her own Harley. Even with Birds of Prey, she's more
Yeah.
on her own, working with other people,
Right.
and Suicide Squad Harley.
Right.
You know, as a member of a team. And I almost think that my favorite incarnation of the three, even though I loved the Suicide Squad, is Birds of Prey Harley.
Oh, absolutely.
I would agree. Yeah.
Yeah.
I just think she
100%.
was more independent. She was, and they actually even stepped her back a little bit at the beginning of the Suicide Squad. I didn't feel that the lessons she learned through Birds of Prey were reflected in that Harley, with the exception of the red flag conversation.
Right.
But I wanted to explore that. What do you guys think? Is this the same
So-
character?
Yes, 100% the same character. And I was thinking about this because I actually watched all three movies getting ready for your podcast. So I have I have this all very fresh in my head. I particularly watched Suicide Squad Harley recently and really reevaluated her in light of that movie. I came up with a really interesting observation about the Joker in that movie that we can kind of sidebar unless we want to talk about it. But
I'm always down to talk
ragging
about
on
the
Joker.
Leto.
Yeah.
We'll
Well,
talk
okay.
about the Leto Joker.
Well, okay, then I think I can do this quickly. So what was very interesting to me, everybody I think kind of agrees that Joker was a failure because he wasn't, his character design, his portrayal were weak.
I agree with you. I'm going to step on you a second. I agree with you. I don't necessarily think that was as much Jared Leto's portrayal as it was his script. Now, his portrayal wasn't great.
Direction.
Yeah, but his script and direction were piss poor.
I will say that's one of the few parts of the Snyder cut that I enjoyed. I enjoyed the Leto part of the Snyder cut.
Mm-hmm.
He was so much scarier. He was so much scarier in Justice League.
Yes.
But so talking about directorial choices with the Joker, first of all, I think they just told David Ayer to lean into his wheelhouse, and Southern California gangsters and just go with it. But also, one of the things I really noticed is that the way they wrote the Joker, and I think this is actually a brilliant choice that was undermined because of the other problems with the Joker. But I noticed that in absolutely every way, the Joker was subservient to Harley. His story, he had no motivation at all other than Harley. In every scene he's in, Harley's story is paramount. And it was like they deliberately underplayed the Joker because this character, when you talk about scene stealing, movie stealing characters, the Joker is way high on the list. He can easily just dominate absolutely everything that he is in. But in this case, it almost felt like they softened him deliberately to let Harley shine. And I respect that choice a lot.
I do, but I think they went a little far. Like, I think they did both of the characters a disservice in doing so.
But I do find it interesting that you pointed that out, Loopy, because you kind of just said the same thing about Harley in the instance in the comic, right? Because Harley is definitely a character that when she is on panel, when she is on screen, all focus goes to her. Only one-upped, I would say, by either Joker or like Batman.
Yeah.
No? Because she is a character that demands so much attention, she kind of stylistically grew up in that environment, because you talk about going all the way back to the Batman animated series. It's why she's a beloved character. It's why people remembered who she was, and why nobody remembers who, was his name Punch? Was that
Punchline?
Punchline. The old Joker sidekick.
Right.
Punchline is the new one. Prank is the sidekick of the Trickster from the old Flash TV show where Mark Hamill was playing the Trickster.
Right. Yep.
And Prank is the Trickster's sidekick, who's 100% a precursor to Harley Quinn. If you look at anything involving her, you might even remember Prank's appearance on the CW Flash.
Yeah.
She's 100% a Harley Quinn, precursor.
Okay, very
Nerd
cool.
Done.
Yeah. Don't be done. Nerd more.
We love having experts on.
Yes, but that brings us into the conversation of the Suicide Squad. And the reason that I framed it the way that I did, and I made sure that I remembered to do it, is because I don't want this to be a comparison of Suicide Squad versus the Suicide Squad. Because first of all, I think that's unfair.
Yeah.
I think it was different directors, it was different times, and it's the difference between starting something out and course correcting.
Yeah.
I think that
there is also the fact that they did very much stick in the same world, kept a lot of the same cast.
Sure.
Very specifically, this is one that I didn't even realize until I actually had to go back and do the research, and I was just like, well, wait, what? So we've got, in the first movie, we've got Joel Kinnaman, who wandered around, and everybody goes, wait a minute, who is this guy? and then we see him again. The next time we see him is Altered Carbon, season 1, and we're just like, oh, he's Colonel Rick Flag.
Yes.
Oh my God! But we didn't think about that because, well, the first Suicide Squad movie was not that great, and then we come back and they brought him back. Yes,
well,
did we kill him?
He has probably the most character development from the previous movie to the next.
Agreed.
Like you 100% get the feeling like that in Suicide Squad, Rick Flag is very like uncertain about what he's doing. He's uncomfortable with the methods, you know, he doesn't know how to work with the villains he's working with. And when you see him in the Suicide Squad, you get the sense they've done like 100 missions. Right.
Which
like,
is also
But we also end up with him like, you know, here we've completed what we needed to do, and then we show up and it's like, wait, how did my people not let me know that you were here? And he's just like, you just see the look on his face right there. It's just like, oh fuck.
Yeah.
Like he knew instantly
Yeah.
as soon as they walk in.
Yeah.
And I mean, the thing that I find interesting with Suicide Squad, looking back on it now, is how much character development was going on while everyone was staring at Harley. Because Margot Robbie Harley was still a very, very new thing. And so that while that was a spotlight on her, people are improving in the background. Like,
Right.
Diablo was an amazing character
Yep.
in the first one.
That character is so cool, and honestly, I kind of wish that he wasn't one of the teeny tiny one, you know, the tiny selection of characters to die in that movie, because like even if you read about Diablo in the comic books, like his guilt over what he's done and his like attempt to redeem himself is a really interesting story. But I thought they did him justice, you know, other than killing him off. I think they did a great job with him.
Yeah, no, I agree.
That one, and I also thought that Michael Rooker as Savant, like both of these movies, like what you were just talking about, and then Michael Rooker as Savant was another character that made me go, I might need to go back and find other comic books about these characters. And this is a great franchise just to do that with. Like if you're not, like if you're somebody like me that didn't grow up with a ton of comics and you're trying to figure out more about what's going on in, you know, this particular verse, this is a great franchise to do it with, because now I want to go look up more stuff on Savant.
Well, and I think what's super interesting is this concept of a Suicide Squad, where you're taking villains who have been captured and are serving time, and you are physically forcing them to become anti-hero. You know, you basically are forcing them to do heroic things, not in a very heroic way.
Mm-hmm.
And it kind of is covered in the comic run that we read, what it does to each character, like how it affects them, and you know, psychologically, morally. It's a really interesting conversation and thought experiment.
Suicide Squad also opens the door when you were talking, Bear, about getting to know characters that you didn't know or whatever. This gives a chance for your B, C, D level, you know, villains and heroes in some cases. I know that there have been some heroes that have been forced into the Suicide Squad.
Come on, Z-list. I mean, you can joke that Suicide Squad is kind of the garbage disposal of the DCU, right? Like that's where Z-list characters go to die. I mean, but like Polka Dot Man.
Zebra Man.
We got a live action Polka Dot Man, and I don't even know who the fuck Polka Dot Man is, but I kind of want to go like look up some comics for Polka Dot Man now.
Right.
So he's way less interesting in the comics, and you have to go really far back.
Yeah, you got to go.
But this is a perfect one for our franchise, because look at everything that this introduces people to. Like
our first bonus episode where we had Vandello on and we built our treat teams, they used arm fall off.
They used TDK,
yeah.
I remember that very specifically. I was just like, who the hell is this?
Because he was their drummer.
Yeah. Because how awesome is it to have, you know, drummer that can, you know, play the drums and not actually be sitting by the drums.
Right. But this is also where I will give DC credit where I feel Marvel lacks. And that is, on average, DC reboots their entire universe every 6 to 8 years.
But they just keep pulling all these people back.
Right.
These
So
people
so
back
they reboot the universe and then dead people come back or their origins are changed. And that annoys some people. I find that great. I mean,
because we get a new iteration. We get something, a completely different twist every time they
you
come
get
out.
people back that, I mean, look at what happens in the comic that we read, but I will frame it into the light of the Suicide Squad, where an entire team dies in the first 15 minutes of the movie.
Mm-hmm.
Which we knew was going to happen.
It's very much like when I was talking earlier about when we had the conversation about, have you watched the new He-Man and the Masters of the Universe? You should watch it. Why? Because He-Man dies in the first episode. Watch this shit. These are great.
Right. And when Warren Ellis did G.I. Joe Resolute, and he killed G.I. Joes pretty consistently through the entirety of the run that he did. But that's the thing is you have seen these characters die. You go back, you're a little more interested in them. Also, by rebooting every 6 to 8 years, DC says, hey, people who have not read these universes, here's your jump on point.
Plus, we're getting new generations interested in the reboots.
Right. And I mean, some have been more successful than others. But I mean, at least they're giving it the try of trying to explore different worlds. Also, DC more Elseworlds than I ever run into. And I've said before, and now it's going to have an animated movie, so it's coming. But Injustice is probably one of my favorite DC properties.
Have you seen the trailer? Have you seen the
I
trailer
have
for the Injustice movie? Yeah,
I'm very, very excited, and I can only hope that it spins off into something longer and larger, like a TV series, because Injustice can easily be a TV series. But then we can explore probably one of my favorite dynamics that is only really explored in that, and that is Harley Quinn and Green Arrow. And
good. It's so good.
Their interactions are so good. At one point, he takes her down, and he's like, yes, this is the Arrow Cave. She's like, the Arrow Cave? You're not going to call it the Quiver? And he's like, oh, shit, that's so much better. And then, it's a running gag where he's like, I'm actually thinking about calling it the Quiver instead, in front of Harley, and people will be like, that is so much better. And she's like, I know, right? But yeah, it's so we start out,
and even so much more for the sexual innuendo. But on top of that, and that was what part of the writing that I actually enjoyed about what we read is that Harley was just boom, 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 giving those.
It's not just that, but it's also an in and out.
Yeah,
it's not a in to do this monologue. It's a one-liner, and I'm out.
Nope. Oh shit! They just Batmaned me.
Yeah.
And the one time she did it, Batman was actually there. It's they both Batmaned me.
But we were talking about the first Suicide Squad movie. So those characters, I mean, an introduction, it was good. You can, however, tell pretty easily that in the Suicide Squad, Bloodshot was supposed to be Deadpool. It's just that Will Smith just was not coming back.
They don't even mess around with it in interviews. They'll flat out tell you that that part was written for Deadshot. We just had scheduling differences with Will Smith. He was going to be in the movie, and then they just couldn't work out the schedule.
I was about to say he was also going to have his own Deadshot movie.
But we got Idris Elba, who I did not know could do comedy that well.
Well, I recommend you watch Luther.
Luther's
I have
good.
seen all of Luther.
Oh my god,
good, but yes,
so good.
Hobbs and Shaw is the other one that I would recommend.
That's true.
If you want to see some fun
Black Superman,
Superman. I am Black Superman, which is just Black Adam. But well, that's more Egyptian Superman.
I mean, personally, I think Idris Elba should be the next James Bond, but
I agree.
That's just me.
But
it's not just you.
It's not just me. It is everyone else. Idris Elba for James Bond. We're going to start a movement. Hashtag. Hashtag
but-
Idris Elba for James Bond.
Even though you can tell that Bloodsport was supposed to be Deadshot, right? I will say that once they made the change, they leaned into it in the right way. Like, there isn't a lot to know about Bloodsport except for his altercation Superman, but they leaned into that. I just wish that they had not used a daughter figure and instead had used Bloodsport's brother, because I find that's a much more unique take on that kind of family dynamic that motivates you. And I think they could have used his brother instead of his daughter without really changing what they were doing to the movie.
Sure. No reason to double up and make people think that you're just trying to have a Deadshot ripoff.
Right.
Yeah, and if you don't know, a big part of Bloodsport's motivation is the fact that Bloodsport was supposed to go into the army, and instead he was a draft dodger from the Vietnam War, actually. And his brother pretended to be him and took his place and came back from the war terribly disabled. And I think it would have been an interesting way to bring a disabled person into the story in a way where where you don't necessarily need to feature a female character as the male character's motivation. And I think that dynamic between siblings is something that doesn't come up enough in comic book stories. So
I agree. I completely agree. But leading into the whole Bloodsport dynamic, then we can talk about John Cena's Peacemaker.
Oh my god.
So good.
I don't care how many more movies I have to watch, even in my lifetime. If 1 out of 10 of them has John Cena in it at this point, I'm happy with that.
You get a whole Peacemaker series. They're doing a whole TV show.
Yeah.
They are. Yep. Which is one of the reasons for that deleted scene where Peacemaker's still alive.
Sure.
But
it's the credit scene.
Yes.
But yeah.
I've been a fan of John Cena. I mean, I'm a wrestling fan, so he has a way of delivering lines or doing things, making himself goofy. He is not afraid. Like, this is the man that, in a wrestling promotion, The Rock called him Fruity Pebbles, and he leaned into it so much they put him on the box of Fruity Pebbles for a while.
Yeah, he has really great timing. He can dead sell so much. Oh God!
Yeah, he
so
just
good.
walks straight into a line, face first, and does not care.
For anyone who wants to see a great comedic performance from John Cena in a movie that was not seen by a lot of people, there's a movie called Sisters. That's
oh my god,
Tina Fey and Amy Poehler as sisters, but he plays a drug dealer that shows up at this party.
So amazing.
And he has like face tattoos. He has a 4-minute monologue where he is just pulling baggies out of a bag and naming like these drugs. But at one point you can tell he's just making them
He's just riffing. He's just riffing and it's hysterical.
It is so good because he keeps stoic through the whole thing. Oh, he's so funny.
My safe word is keep going.
I am not a fan of dump comedy, right? Like right. I really don't like really overt comedy, like laugh track comedy. And the comedy in the Suicide Squad was exactly to my taste, where they're just like delivering like with complete seriousness and gravitas, except
Hungry
is ridiculous.
Right?
Brand?
Yeah, I mean, we watched it when it came out, the three of us together, and I mean, we got done with it and we're just staring at the screen.
I think that was actually when I watched it with you guys. I think it was the second time
for you,
for me, because I watched it with Kat and Troy at first, and I was dying.
I think when we got done with it, I was just kind of staring at the screen for a bit, and I was like, I think this might be my favorite DC movie. I mean,
it really is. It used to be Aquaman, now it's this.
For me, it was Birds of Prey.
Birds of Prey is fantastic, and Harley is my girl, but you also have to give it up for Shazam, because that movie.
Shazam!
Shazam was a lot of fun. Yeah, I mean, there are a lot of things for DC on
I think
the
I just liked
horizon.
Aquaman though, just for the soundtrack. Like the soundtrack was whoever put that together for Aquaman, it was perfect. It made up for what's his name, Willem Dafoe phoning it in. It made up for bad script. It made up for a lot of that soundtrack made up for a lot.
Aquaman was definitely this sort of movie where they're like, man, they're letting us make an Aquaman movie? Well, they're definitely never going to let us make an Aquaman movie ever again.
Not going to get a second one. Might as well fucking rock it.
Exactly. So they're like, so let's just put everything in this movie. Like, I heard your episode on Green Lantern and talking about how they put all the Green Lantern stuff in the Green Lantern movie. They did the same thing with Aquaman, just much more successfully.
Yeah.
Right. But I think, actually, I thought I saw something. I was flipping through, like, Google, like, headlines and stuff like that the other day, and I think they're making a second Aquaman.
They are, because they were deciding whether or not to fire Amber Heard for a while.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But Aquaman greatly exceeded everybody's expectations, including mine. So...
I mean, the second that I saw an H.P. Lovecraft book on the coffee table in the opening sequence, I was just like, I'm in. Let's do this shit. They're gonna help. I'm in. We're gonna have something good. It might not be a good ride getting there because H.P. Lovecraft was a terrible person, but I'm down for the stories. Let's do this.
Hashtag H.P. Lovecraft's cat.
Right?
Wow. This is the third show we've talked about H.P. Lovecraft's cat. For those of you keeping track at home.
And yet no Dune reference.
I'm sorry. I think I almost choked on air.
I mean, he started it. It's his fault.
Right there, Jason Momoa.
Jason Taylor, fuck your fucking voice guns.
Okay,
anyways,
there we go.
I'm an easy sell. I'm an easy sell when it comes to kind of everything, but D especially. Like, if you give me one scene that takes me back to being that 5-year-old girl in the comic book store, I will immediately see the movie as a glass half full kind of thing. Like, I will see the flaws, but I'll be like, but Wonder Woman went over the top, and everything else doesn't matter because Wonder Woman went over the top in that. And
right.
And so like I said, I'm an easy sell. I was like, I will pay $15 to see shirtless to Momoa. Like, I will pay this and I will be happy I spent 2 hours and $15 to see. But Aquaman just exceeded my every expectation. Like, I won't tell you it's the best movie, but still, I was pleasantly surprised.
I saw it in the theater and I was not I have a system of ratings for movies that usually involves things if it's bad, watch it on Netflix. That's low stars. As opposed to high stars, which is go watch it in the theater twice. And Aquaman caught me right in the middle at, was not ashamed to have spent movie theater money on this movie.
Yeah, I mean, I actually really thought all the designs in that movie were actually really good. Everything they did with Atlantis was great. Like I said, who knew? I live in a world where I get an Aquaman movie that they actually spent big budget money on. Sweet.
And it's the same world where you have your choice of King Shark portrayals.
Cinematography was good. Plotline wasn't bad.
Well, let's pull that all back to the Suicide Squad and wait for our Aquaman episode.
Oh, yeah, we gotta have an Aquaman episode. Somebody out there want to do Aquaman with us? We're taking requests.
I was going to say, I am not an expert on Aquaman, but I don't think anybody is. So,
right?
If there is someone out there that has a passion for Aquaman, I want to hear about that.
It's kind of like when we were doing the Rec conversations on the second Civil War comic line. There's it heavily involves the Inhumans, and I made some disparaging remark about the Inhumans, and Leia was like, "Oh, you probably should do that." I was like, "Yeah, I don't want to offend the 3 Inhumans fans."
Somewhere out there, somewhere listening to us is an Aquaman fan that is all about that. He's gonna come. He or she or they are gonna come to us, and they're gonna be like,
and they're gonna say, "Her, come on through the door."
Well, and so here's our segue back to the Suicide Squad, right? Also,
thank you for bringing us back because we needed that.
I don't know a single comic book, and like I've been into comics for, quite a lot of years, and I don't know a single person who could get through the character lineup of, any of these comics, any of these movies without going, who? For at least a
Right.
couple of the characters, right?
Right.
But it gives them this wonderful sort of freedom
Yeah.
to sort of make them their own. And this is kind of where I want to talk about Polka Dot Man a little bit, because
Yeah. Yeah.
like Polka Dot Man is ridiculous, should be ridiculous, but like his history in the comic books was sort of like an evil engineer, right? And all of his polka dot stuff is like scienced, right? But who cares if you completely reboot the origin of Polka Dot Man?
Right. And give him the ability to weaponize mommy issues.
Exactly. Exactly. And the fact that they took this movie and they're like, we are gonna reboot Polka Dot Man, we are gonna own it, we're gonna make you love him. I was like, yes.
Listen, if I could just visualize my mother being every evil person in front of me and then blast polka dots at them to blow them up, I'd do it too.
Well, and they did the same thing with Ratcatcher, actually. Like Ratcatcher Ratcatcher in comics is 100% nothing like even Taika Waititi's,
Right. And they bounce straight over Ratcatcher 1. They're like, no, this is a Suicide Squad movie. We can have just a person with the number 2 after them that is never, like the original incarnation has never shown up before.
So yeah, I mean, like nobody can just tell you off the cuff. I was like, oh yeah, Ratcatcher's like my favorite Arkham villain. I've been following Ratcatcher since whenever he came out in 1987, and yeah, you can just take all these characters, own them, run with them, make us love them. I actually have a whole set of the Suicide Squad action figures that Target put out for this movie, mostly because they had to build a king shark and we couldn't resist.
What?
Oh,
Can't the build a king shark. But I was like,
that's going in the case, baby. That's going straight in your case.
We gotta find it first.
Yeah.
We know exactly what's going on after this recording is done.
Every
Target,
Every
right?
Target. But instead of including Ratcatcher 2, they included Peacemaker instead. And I was super bummed. Like, my whole family was super bummed. We're like, look, guys, look. Like, Peacemaker is cool and all, but where's our Ratcatcher 2?
Right.
And again, I live in a world where I can legitimately say, hey, guys, you fell down on the job because I don't have a Ratcatcher 2 figure.
Right. Yeah, it should have been Ratcatcher that I used to complete my king shark.
Mm-hmm.
Wait, were they Funkos?
I think if it's
remember.
I think if it's a build a king shark, you then have to buy every individual figure, and it comes with a little bit of the king shark. So.
That's exactly how it is. It's like
Right, but are they Funko? Are they Pops?
No,
Funko Pops.
They're not
Okay,
Pops.
They're action figures. Yeah.
Yeah.
because I am currently on Target's site looking them up.
I want King Shark in the Build-A-Bear workshop.
His mouth opens. You can open and close his mouth. You can make him like angry face or smiley face.
Hungry!
Ren.
Oh my God. So, to keep us somewhat on topic, let's talk about all the actors they got just to blow them up.
So good.
Right? So
good.
many.
Pete Davidson, Michael Rooker. Who else was in there? Nathan Fillion.
Can we please get Nathan Fillion back? I just want Nathan Fillion to get more work.
Right?
They got Jai Courtney to be Captain Boomerang.
Right. Yeah,
I can't even pronounce the dude's name that played Javelin.
But yeah, just having all of these characters and all these actors just to because
Sean Gunn.
Yes.
Enough said.
Right, because James Gunn's brother.
Yes.
Yeah. Because after the first Suicide Squad movie came out, they were like, "Where not enough people died." James Gunn's
Sorry,
like, "Okay,
not enough people died in that movie." That is a true statement about Suicide Squad.
Yes. Oh, speaking of people dying, the Suicide Squad. Loops, you got a kill count for us.
I do have a kill count for you, but I'm actually looking up a different version of my kill count right now.
Okay.
But we can talk about this because I had multiple people tell me I got the kill count wrong because a lot of people a lot of people did not stick around to see Peacemaker.
Oh.
And I am pleased to say that when I walked, so what we did for both Suicide Squad and the Suicide Squad was we put together a Deadpool. Ha ha ha. And I'm sorry to say that my Deadpool for Suicide Squad was completely off base, which made me quite sad. However, I did call 8 named squad members dying before we walked in, and that is how many that actually died in the movie. That there were 8 of them that died. I had actually named them all, but I got one pair wrong, which was Polka Dot Man and Peacemaker. I had predicted that Peacemaker would die in Polka Dot Man, but otherwise I got all of them right. But if you want the rest of the kill count, so 8 members of the squad who are named died. Other named characters that die, 5. I could name them, but I don't want to spoil it for anybody too bad.
Well, we can spoil the movie.
Okay, cool.
We assume people watch the movie.
Everybody in that other category includes Luna, Milton, the Thinker, Starro itself, and Ratcatcher 1.
Yep.
Now, when we put together the kill count, like my husband and I went through the movie twice, both keeping our own kill counts and comparing them after each scene, and we took the average. So I would say our plus or minus on this is probably pretty close. It's probably within like 4 or 5. When it comes to the on-screen deaths. And listen to this number because this is amazing. The number we came up with was 178. And that is every unnamed character.
Okay, I was gonna say
that falls down from a direct blow that you see on screen.
Okay.
Oh.
So does it not count the Starro-faced people then?
We counted Starros separately because Starros were in such a weird bucket, right? Like because the Thinker explicitly
that's
says,
fair.
Yeah, the Thinker explicitly says as soon as the starfish attaches to their head, they're dead. He refers to people in the cages as walking corpses. So
Right.
we didn't count any of those at all. But we did count everybody who got a starfish attached to their face that you could see on screen.
That we actually saw them hit. Okay,
Yeah.
that's fair.
So kind of like tracking all of the other deaths, like there has to be a attack that lands and causes somebody to fall down. So we did the same thing with Starro, but we kind of counted his separately. Starro attachments were at 34, which now, if you count them as kills, our kill count for the movie is above 200. And that's
Wow.
on-screen deaths. It's on-screen deaths. And I did track most kills by a single character, which I'm proud to say goes to my girl, Harley.
Well, she did have her own scene of like slaughtering people left and right.
Yeah.
Mass murder. Absolute mass murder. And
Yeah.
And Harley by herself, as the number one number of deaths in the movie, she killed 50.
Wow.
That's more than Starro.
Yes.
Well, actively in the movie.
Well, that's fine. I'd give her credit where it is due. So, oh my God, that's amazing.
Yes, Harley killed more people than Starro.
So I also want to talk about the villains because we just said what a world we live in where we're angry we didn't get a Ratcatcher action figure and there are multiple incarnations of King Shark, but nobody's like, wow, that whole Starro plot line, like you use Starro. You use Starro effectively.
Yes, and weirdly, that's a really like classic portrayal of Starro as villain, right? Like giant starfish comes along and attaches weird things to everybody's heads and takes them over. I think the weird thing that they did with Starro was make him
Classic storyline.
Yeah,
Classic storyline right there.
Yeah, they made him sympathetic as opposed to an entity that deliberately came to Earth to do the same thing. But like, yeah, and they leaned into Starro 100%. Like you've seen little like Easter eggs about Starro. Like part of the reason why Starro is significant and a lot of people know about Starro is because Starro is the first villain to take on the Justice League as a whole in their current incarnation, right? So Starro comes up a lot in comic book history, and a lot of comic book nerds know who Starro is. There are nods to Starro, little Easter eggs about it in a bunch of the other DC movies. But here they were like, nope, he's going to be pink and blue, and he's going to be giant.
Right?
And there's like no like big interpretation on him, or not all that many big changes about him. It's just Starro.
I'm a giant alien starfish that mind fucks people with tiny versions of myself.
Yep.
The other, one of the other villains, the Thinker. We are, and this is where we are as people that influenced our viewing of this show. But we are in the middle of Capaldi's run of Doctor Who right now. Like, we have not gotten to the Husbands of River Song yet. We are like at the beginning of the second Capaldi season.
Right.
Well, yeah, I feel like with Capaldi, like they were just like, okay, we have this part written. We know what the character is going to be, but now we have to find an actor who can give us this really like overblown monologue that includes like science, but also chastising you for the things you've done bad. And it's Capaldi, that's who you get for that.
And why not pick an old Scottish punk?
Yeah.
Right.
You know?
Yeah, an old Scottish punk rocker. Yeah.
Perfect.
Absolutely.
Perfect.
Yeah. Just chef kiss. Just that casting is
Also, I say old euphemistically. Because he is not that much older than I am.
He looks a lot older than you are.
He's a punk.
Yeah, that's true.
Lived hard. He lived hard.
That's right.
I also think that's not the first Thinker, although they didn't really say so. I don't remember in the movie if they said he was DeVoe, but I don't think he was DeVoe.
I don't remember what name they gave him.
I do, but I remember like when I was looking at the movie, like right after it came out, that he's actually not Thinker 1, which makes a lot of sense.
Wasn't Thinker 1? I mean, if they're counting Green Lantern in continuity, that would be the first Thinker, right?
I thought it was DeVoe on the Flash, but it just made me happy that they didn't. You didn't have to worry about whether or not it was this Thinker or that Thinker, right?
Right.
Oh, they're just different Thinkers. All right, cool.
Well, and that's what I really enjoy about a well-done comic book movie is you can enjoy it at another level if you're a comic book fan, or you could just surface level it.
Yeah.
Like, you know,
very much like when we did Doom Patrol.
Doom Patrol is a good example. I'm finding watching What If.
What If is amazing.
What If is fantastic, coming up later this season. But I am a huge fan of the old What If comics, and there are a lot of nods to how they used to structure things or do things in the old What If comics.
I mean, having not read the previous comics, like new series is the shit.
Well, the new series is a lot of the old takes they used to do applied to the MCU, which I really, really enjoy. Also, I'm saving it, but just to give a little preview, there was an entire conversation I had with somebody the other day about whether the Watcher in the What If series is Uatu or whether it's not, which probably isn't going to mean much to, but we'll get into it.
I'm sure I'll figure that out later.
I did just look it up. It is Thinker number 4 who's in the Suicide.
Wow. All right. Okay. So going through it, we've had a brilliant time, but like editing this is going to be fun, and I'm going to have to cut it off. So
sorry, we've been all over the place.
No, this is our best shows are all over the place. Jenn has already said that she will continue reading.
Absolutely.
Loopy, I know you read in general, but since you hadn't read Bad Blood, does this encourage you to pick up where this left off and pick it up again?
100%, but in addition to that, it has made me very interested in author Tom Taylor.
Yeah.
So I'm thinking I'm just going to start looking at maybe some of the other things he's done and picked it up, because his style is reminding me a little bit of Scott Snyder, who is like one of my favorites, and so I think I'm going to go down that rabbit hole.
Okay. No, that's awesome. Yeah, very Snyder-esque. I would agree with you. teams. Both seem to do teams extremely well in the dynamic of teams. Bear, are you going to keep reading Suicide Squad comics?
So here's the thing. My only downside about this particular Suicide Squad comic, and if I have to base my judgment of whether or not I'm going to keep reading off of this one, I would say no. Just because this one, though it was a great comic, this was a great graphic novel. It kind of opened up Suicide Squad, brought in a whole mess of new people, did just what I imagine Suicide Squad would do. Some people are going to die off, you're going to bring some new people in. But it also was designed to kill Suicide Squad and then bring in the Revolutionaries.
Okay, well then let me ask you this.
I would definitely read some fucking Revolutionaries.
Read the Revolutionaries, okay.
Based off of this comic alone, I don't know that I would go out and look for more Suicide Squad. I'll definitely look for more Suicide Squad movies, especially if they've got James Gunn running the show. But the Revolutionaries were awesome.
I'm in the same boat. This actually reminds me of a lot, and I think Loopy and I may be the only two that pick up on this as old school comics people. This gave me really big Stormwatch into Authority vibes. So Warren Ellis took over a property that was called Stormwatch that was a team comic out of Wildcat years and years ago. And through a storyline that he designed, he changed the team structure, he changed their mission, he changed everything into a whole other group called the Authority. And the Authority actually went on to become more popular and better known than Stormwatch. But this kind of reminds me of that. It's a book that is meant to be a transition. Also famously, like Teen Titans became the Outsiders. Like that was another, like
Sure.
You take that team that is known, but you turn them into another team. But how do you bring people along the way? Well, the last book is the introduction of the new team.
Sure.
So yeah, I like that, and I absolutely will check out. This may be one of my favorite things that we've done for DC. But looking at the back cover, by the way, Jen, as you mentioned, MB characters and all the other things, this actually was nominated for a GLAAD Media Award. This book.
Oh, nice.
So
Very nice.
Pretty awesome. Also, Tom Taylor collaborated with Bruno Redondo and Daniel Semperi, who both did Injustice. So, of course, I enjoyed this. Because it also has a little bit of that Injustice humor in a lot of ways, which is taking, well, in this case, two of the big three and like presenting them in ways that are just a little off character for them, but enough that it's just kind of a wink.
Well, it puts them their appearances in the comic don't as big name characters.
Right.
They don't take the scene. They don't steal the scene.
No.
They are just part of what's happening there.
Right.
And it's not like there is one scene where one of them it looks like they are kind of like, oh yeah, go ahead, everything's happening.
You could definitely tell from reading this whole graphic novel that there was no favoritism shown.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Because in certain cases, and not just in DC, but in all comics where there's like a big character, like if you're going to have Batman in your comic, here is the Bible that you must adhere to of the things he will and will not do. And in this especially, it seems like that was not
the case because Batman got his goddamn car stolen.
Well, okay. And
spoiler alert.
all right, I'm just gonna say this. It is part of this scene that Bear just referenced where Batman and Deadshot are standing on the curb,
and they're having a conversation.
And Deadshot says, "Should I call a car? Do you want me to call an
Uber?
Should I call you an Uber?" No, he says first, he's like, "Should I call a car?" And I think it was an aside. And then he turns to Batman and says, "Should I call you an Uber?" And Batman turns to him and says, "Should I call you an ambulance?" And it's like, dude, okay, enough.
Yeah.
There is a lot of ripping on Batman in this graphic novel,
There
and
is
I
quite a bit.
genuinely love it.
Yeah, well, it's not just ripping on it. I like the end of this comic, and I'm not going to say how, but the end of this comic ends with the entirety of the Justice League being there. And it just feels like such a payoff of the previous 10 and a half issues.
Yeah.
Like the last issue where this team and the Justice League are facing each other.
Right.
And there is like a whole conversation, and there's a whole... It
There's a
very much
conversation-
shows the difference.
There's a conversation that happens, and the Justice League gets spanked
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
at the end. It's all completely political and amazing.
Yes. No, very, very well done. There's also the line through it that of the Justice League. The Justice League is just the Suicide Squad in daylight, and it's so true and it's so good.
Yep.
But yeah. So, Loopy, I'm glad that I've had you on this episode for no other reason than this very much made me interested in a lot of DC stuff.
Sweet.
Yeah.
Yeah. Me too.
I am right now for Rhett Conversations, which I record tomorrow. I'm reading and I'm going to teach somebody about Flashpoint.
Ooh.
And not knowing a lot about DC, I thought I was just extremely lost until I stopped, did a little research, and found out that Flashpoint just introduces a bunch of people that have never existed before.
Yep.
So now I feel a lot better about what I'm doing. But they're kind of weird takes on people that exist. It's fun. It's a lot of fun.
It is
but-
a lot of fun, and they're doing a big chunk of that in the Flash movie that
Oh, good.
they're working on. So we're going to see that on the big
Okay.
screen as well, I think so.
I've been through Flashpoint in the Flash TV series, which wasn't quite as confusing as this is. But
yeah, it's like
as-
baby steps into Flashpoint, which like everybody needs. Like you said, you were doing an episode on Flashpoint. I'm like, is there going to be a PowerPoint presentation with like graphics?
Yeah. Now it's literally a show where I'm explaining the plot of something, and the person I'm explaining it to at any point can go, "Wait, I have a question." So this might be a 2-part episode.
Yeah, I was going to be like, what, 3 hours? Like, okay.
Yeah. Well, it took 4 hours for me to explain Civil War II to Hollywood. So
Okay.
Wait.
So this could be
Can I,
8.
can I sit in on the Flashpoint one?
that's
Because
tomorrow
It's
at 1,
tomorrow.
man.
I have the feeling that whoever your guest is might not be cool with the level of questions I'm going to ask.
No, it's fine. It's fine. It's all good. But Loopy, thank you so much for coming on the show. This was fantastic.
Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. I'm sure we will have you back again. There's once that Harley movie comes out.
Yes, please.
And I'm sure a bunch of other DC properties and a few Marvel ones, because I know, we keep in communication. We nerd out a lot. So
Like, I'm not a hater. I like to like things. Like, I'm not out to prove that DC is better than anything else. I just want people to know that there are things to love about it.
yeah,
So,
no
perfect.
matter what your brother says.
I know, yeah. Our fun rivalry is definitely fun. But the show you should call me for is if you do Superman and Lois.
All right. I've got it on the list, but that's kind of my gauntlet. We've had to do a very special episode on Batman where we tried
Right.
to tackle things Batman. I think just doing Superman and Lois the first season may be a good digestible Superman, like approaching Superman.
Superman's going to be weird for this franchise as opposed to Red Conversations, where you guys already did the
Where we walked
Death
through
of
the death
Superman,
of Superman.
and I would have loved to have been there for that. I wish I could have, but
Yeah.
Death of Superman is like a WWE wrestling match in comic book form. Like it's not really even worth talking about, other than like its art and its
Other
panels and
than-
the characters it's introduced. It was not
Right.
good. So
Yeah, no, there is literally an orphan that draws a Batman or a Superman symbol on concrete because he figures, well, Batman has a bat signal. Maybe Superman will just see if I deface a parking lot with the S. And then Superman does, because of course he does.
because he's Superman.
Yeah. But no, the Superman episode will be interesting because we have to balance like really good, poignant Superman stories I happen to think American Alien's one of the best Superman stories, just because I really like how it's put out. But then you have to balance it with Superman literally saying, well, I could go and count every molecule in the atmosphere if you'd like me to.
You can 100% tell
People-
when there's a writer who gets Superman and who doesn't get Superman.
Yeah.
And that is a rabbit hole I could go down for 8 hours, so I'm just going to stop now.
And then you have people that will say things like, well, if Superman and Hulk got into a fight, Superman's just going to punch the Hulk into the sun. And I'm just like, well, you're stupid for even saying that in the first place. But
Because if
He's probably
Superman
going to try to talk to him
Right.
and help him be less angry, actually.
Right, because if Superman could punch anybody into the sun, he wouldn't have died. He would have done it to Doomsday.
Right.
All right.
That's exactly the point.
Yes, absolutely. Well, Loopy, again, thank you so much for joining us as I look up what our next show is so that I can pimp it. But is there anything, any
Stuff you want to pimp?
stuff you want to, you want to pimp?
What do you
self-promote?
What are you plugging?
Well, not comic book related.
Go ahead.
But
What you got?
the next thing I'm doing this afternoon is working on your jack-o'-lantern.
Yay!
So
We are getting a teal pumpkin with the graphically novel symbol for when we give comics away on Halloween.
Yes.
I still don't even have my ink yet. Like, so much other shit been going on. My co-hosts have their ink, and I don't have my graphically novel tattoo yet.
But
so yes, it's September when we're recording this, and this is so like my busy time because I carve jack-o'-lanterns, and people buy them from me. So if you want to take a look at some of my work or maybe order a jack-o'-lantern, I can do synthetic jack-o'-lanterns that last forever and can be shipped all over the country. My website there is hauntedcarving.com.
Fantastic. Yes, and we are supporting her. We, I mean, comparatively to some of the stuff you've done, our logo done by the brilliant Meredith Gerber is nothing. I mean,
It's actually like lettering is actually much harder than you think it is. I happen to be good at lettering, but I actually hate doing it because it's one of those things that it takes like 10 times the work that people think it does.
You looked at her and you were like, oh yeah, you're going to do some easy stuff for us. And she was like, no, your shit's fucking tough.
So actually the original thing that I sent her was the top to, like, in the arch say Happy Halloween from, and then the graphically novel logo. And she was like, okay, let's talk about the Happy Halloween from a little bit.
Absolutely hated you is what I'm hearing now.
Well, and also it would have made less space on the pumpkin. It would have just, I'm like, we can get everything else as long as we do the logo with graphically novel like on it. And so that is what we are getting. And that will be on full display as we hand out comic books dressed as the Addams Family, as we have
That's
every
another
year.
thing we have in common is a serious joy about the Addams Family. So
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, listen,
Justin
well-
and I's custom text message sound for each other is snap snap. So
Well, and I do have, I mean, even though I do live, my house is more farmhouse Victorian because I'm in the Midwest, but I have envy of the lovely displays and what you have, especially for the approach to your house for trick-or-treaters. Fantastic.
Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah, last year I carved 40 jack-o'-lanterns. They were simple faces, but
No, I
40 is
remember
a
that.
lot.
Yeah.
That's a lot.
No, that
That's
arch
a lot of pumpkins. That's
that
a lot of
arch
pumpkin seeds.
is gorgeous, but
Yeah,
they're not real.
They're
it's a
synthetic.
9 foot tall, 6 foot wide archway of jack-o'-lanterns. Yeah.
I did during my LARPing days when I was playing JR, I had a salon that was in a rented camp.
Camp Hitaga.
I
remember that night
I carved
because there were
13 pumpkins, each with a different clan symbol, and there was a path to get to the cabin where we were. So I put the pumpkins through the path, and that was. I remember that taking a week, to get through 13 pumpkins.
And would you get 2 XP for that?
Oh, don't even start. Yeah.
Sorry.
Yes, my Amp friends came over and said, "Oh, you did all of this.
You'd
Here's
gotten like
all the
6
awards
different
you would have
awards.
gotten." Yeah,
We'd have given you an Amp Guard for doing this, but like
you play Vampire LARP.
Vampire LARPers. Oh, you get a whole 2 XP for that. Fuck you guys.
Anyway, yeah, I held myself back, and we'll see how much of this makes it into the show, but I held myself back from making the comparison of DC rebooting every 6 to 8 years and how One World by Night really needs to reboot.
Oh my God, that's another rabbit hole we could go down.
I know.
Exactly.
I know. That's why you've
We
written
could have-
short stories about me.
We could have several episodes just on that conversation.
Yeah, Loopy's character when I was in LARP and when I was playing Zio was on the Malkavian Archon squad, and she was one of his mentors, and it was pretty much like getting mentored by Harley Quinn.
Yeah, a little bit.
There was literally a point where she revved up a chainsaw and then hit Voice of Madness on a group of Sabbat. But
Amazing.
Voice of Madness
Amazing.
Also not necessarily
Mad props,
gonna
girl.
save your teammates because they have to make the same save.
Well, yeah, that doesn't make a difference. Mad props, girl.
The chainsaw is there to get everybody to look at me, right? So,
Right?
Yeah. No.
Like the Malkavian has walked in with a chainsaw. I draw all the focus. And then I
Yeah,
use
that's
it.
right. Then I use it. Yep. Thanks for looking at me. I didn't even need to bust for awe. All right. Loopy, it was great to have you. Everyone, please tune in 2 weeks when we will be doing Bulletproof Monk.
Bulletproof Monk.
Yeah.
The only comic that not only have I not been able to find, I could only find one issue on the entirety of the internet because I was
I
not
saw that.
because I was not
This
going
is
to
all
pay
we're reading?
because I was not going to pay $120 for the one graphic novel I could track down.
Wow.
So
Yeah, that's fair.
this will be one of the first shows that we ever do in which we're like, is it worth tracking this down?
It's like, listen, guys, do you really love Bulletproof Monk? Sorry.
Are you rich? But until then, take it away, Vandello.
Come with me, I'll tell a story that you might have heard before. Graphically novel, but the same old trouble. Villains always knocking at the door. Pretty pictures on the page, but nothing ever stays the same. Do 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 do. Come at me, and I'll show you something you ain't never seen before. Right or wrong, oh can't we all just get along? My mask is no different than yours. Pretty pictures on the screen, but nothing's ever as it seems. Do 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 do. Hero or villain, loved or hated by millions. Maybe it's wrong, maybe it's right, but you don't want to see my bad side. Do